Hey everybody, what is going on? Hexlex here with another Master Duel video for you guys. So today we're going to be covering Adventure Phantom Knights. Now, I do have to forewarn you that these games that in this video were taken from like literally just before the new pack got announced. Like, I think I played these games, got them all so that I could use them for this video, and then like maybe an hour later they announced the new pack. So I was like, oh cool, that throws a little bit, I was just not being mindful, honestly, to when the previous selection pack was expiring. I honestly, if I had been paying attention to that, I could have planned maybe a little bit better, but no big deal. So just a forewarning that these games are going to be from before the new pack comes out. That said, I don't think it'll influence necessarily how Adventure Phantom Knights is built or played necessarily too much here. So I think that this deck profile will still be mostly relevant here. So yeah, this is good old Adventure Phantom Knights. I really love Phantom Knights just as a deck in general. I have loved playing them for quite a while, and I do think the Adventure engine is definitely still, I mean, obviously it seems to be the much preferred way to go. It is definitely possible to play this deck without the Adventure engine and then still use, like, the kind of old school, like, well, actually, no, it's not anymore. I was going to say use the old school Rongo combo, but then nope, they banned number 75 Gossip Shadow, so this is kind of the way to go, I guess. You could have still, of course, used stuff like Appaloosa and the Dark Requiem line, but it's kind of hard to fit stuff like that and then also the adventure line as well. So I've kind of foregone some of those more techy options and just kind of stuck with a little bit more of a quote-unquote traditional build. I kind of like to do that with the decks I feature here on the channel anyway, because, like, I don't know, I like to give good baseline ideas of what a deck can do, and then if you want to try it and then maybe try some like different techs or like combo enablers, then you can kind of like do that yourself as well. So in any case here, Adventure Phantom Knights, as far as what has changed since the ban list, of course, we are playing Destiny Hero Denier, like many other decks are now, instead of the Destiny Hero Celestial. Denier is actually particularly good in this deck because it's level 3. That enables a lot of plays, actually. It's dark and level 3, so that enables, of course, like Cherubni, enables use into a Break Sword, enables use into potential Rusty Bardish on a follow-up turn, being a dark monster. Destiny Hero Denier is definitely like, yeah, it's one of the things I've touched upon before with not just this particular engine, but engines in general, right? Like how some decks, even if most decks are using like an adventure engine, or like a lot of decks are using like a DPE engine, and they're all using the same cards within the engine, it'll still boost the power level of those decks differently based on how they interact with the deck. And this is obviously definitely going to be an example of where this deck, Phantom Knights, is more greatly boosted by the presence of Denier now in the DPE engine than other decks are, because again, Denier being level 3 enables it to be used to make quite a few of the extra deck monsters that are very vital to the Phantom Knights plays. Let's see, other than that, we're not really doing too much different than before with this build. Obviously, we're playing fewer Crossout Designators because that is now at 1. We're still using the Adventure engine and still definitely setting up Scythe Locks. I definitely still like setting up Scythe Locks with this deck. I again think that's kind of the way to go, mostly because it's so easy. Recently with Live Twins, we did take the Scythe Locking out of that deck, but it's because you kind of had to go out of your way to Scythe Lock with Live Twins, right? You had to be playing not only the specific stuff in the extra deck, rather the Dog Den and the Scythe itself, but that's not as much of an issue as playing multiple Live Twins homes and using those for your combo in order to go into a Scythe Lock, which again was fine but not necessary for something like Live Twins. To be fair, it's not necessary for Adventure Phantom Knights, but Adventure Phantom Knights can so easily go into the Scythe Lock play, right? Like, even if you just open Torn Scales, Torn Scales plus any other card to discard, but by itself is a Scythe Lock setup. So that being the case, it's definitely something that I definitely would still push for in this deck, and that's obviously a very powerful option. As we'll see, I think a couple of games I end up Scythe Locking our opponents here, and at least a couple of these games coming up. All right, let's see here. I don't really think there's anything else different about the build. I don't remember. It's actually been a little bit of time since I came back to Adventure Phantom Knights, so I don't remember. Oh no, I remember the other major changes that we're playing Tsuchinokos again. I did want at least some amount of level 3 extenders. That was something I was kind of missing in the old build, was that I felt like we were like maybe just 1 or 2 extenders shy of being able to more consistently go off, you know, on turn 1 without necessarily hitting like that critical mass of like, okay, and then you just are regularly opening like 3-4 extenders, and it's even that can be a bit too many. But so I added the 2 dangerous Tsuchinokos here to just kind of add a little bit more of extension there, without having to commit too many like more main deck slots. Ideally, if I wanted more level 3 extenders, I'd like to be doing Psychic Wielder and Tracker and 2 E-Tellies, but I didn't necessarily have room to keep this deck at 40 cards and still have room for all of those, so I opted for the 2 Tsuchinoko here instead. So, alright, now that we have covered the build, let's go ahead and break it down card by card, and then we'll take a look at some games. So, we are playing 3 Maxx, 2 the Phantom Knights of Ancient Cloak, 3 the Phantom Knights of Silent Boots, 1 the Phantom Knights of Ragged Gloves, 3 Ash Blossom and Joyous Spring, 2 Dnager, Tsuchinoko, 2 the Phantom Knights of Torn Scales, 1 Destiny Hero Denier, 2 Water Enchantress of the Temple, 1 Artifact Scythe, 1 Destiny Hero Dasher, 1 Wandering Griffin Rider, 1 Nibiru the Primal Being, 1 Foolish Burial, 1 Reinforcement of the Army, 1 Fusion Destiny, 2 Rite of Aramesir, 1 Dracoback the Rideable Dragon, 1 Fateful Adventure, 2 Call by the Grave, 1 Crossout Designator. I always call this card because I'm an old school Yu-Gi-Oh player, right? Like I'm a Yu-Gi boomer, so I see this, I think Nobleman of Crossout, but it's Crossout Designator, 2 Forbidden Droplet, 1 Phantom Knight's Wing, 1 the Phantom Knights of Shady Brigandine, 1 Infinite Impermanence, 2 the Phantom Knights Fogblade. Extra deck is going to have 1 Destiny Hero Destroyer Phoenix Enforcer, 1 Leviair the Sea Dragon, 2 the Phantom Knights of Breaksword, 1 Raider's Knight, 1 Arc Rebellion Xyz Dragon, 1 Divine Arsenal Zeus Sky Thunder, 1 Link Spider, 1 Salamangreat Almirage, 2 Cherubni, the Ebon Angel of the Burning Abyss, 1 Artifact Dagda, 1 Predaplant Vert Anaconda, 1 Nightmare Unicorn, 1 the Phantom Knights of Rusty Bardish, and then finally 1 Access Code Talker. Alright, now that we have covered the list, let's go and take a look at some games. Alrighty, so our first duel here is going to be against Adventure Tenyi. It looks like it's just a couple of cards off from the build that I'm using. I think they opted for Monster Reborn, a second Fateful Adventure, and then they're also playing the Lord of the level 7 Lord of Thunder type of monster that, you know, summons itself by dealing damage to you. I think you take like 3,000 or something. In any case, here we're going to take the first turn, and I'll start with a Foolish for the adventure line here. Definitely like to get that set up as early as possible, when possible, so that way we can bait for stuff like Maxx here. I was actually going to say Ash Blossom, but you know, they would have ashed. They might have ashed, I guess, the Foolish. They don't necessarily always do that, but yeah, I'm actually going to normal summon the Tsuchinoko here in order to trigger the Fateful Adventure. I actually did think quite a while when I was making this play if I wanted to do that, right? If I wanted to go out of my way to again normal summon Tsuchinoko just to get the trigger. And I think I did, because really I didn't want to discard any of the other cards in my hand, right? I want to keep Maxx around in order to, well, obviously Maxx on my opponent during their turn. I want to keep the Torn Scales in my hand as a very important combo piece, and then I also wanted to keep the Denier in my hand as well as a obviously so that I can go into a DPE later. So that being the case, it kind of seemed like, well, and then here's the thing too, if I discarded Tsuchinoko, then it would special summon itself. So in order to prevent my opponent from getting a draw, that's why I normal summoned Tsuchinoko to search the Dracoback to attempt to search the Griffin Rider, but the opponent has now Ash Blossomed us, so that's not necessarily going to happen anymore. Although the fact that they've Ash Blossomed is actually fine with me, because it makes me feel a little bit better about what I'm going to do here, which is then go into a DPE. Now, I don't always go into DPE under Maxx like this, but usually whether or not I go into or play into a Maxx kind of depends on just how many summons I plan on doing, and in turn just how many extra cards I plan on giving them. So you know, giving my opponent 1 extra card, right, that's not that big of a deal, especially if it's set up something like DPE. 2 extra cards is like a little sketchy, like that's starting to give your opponent a lot of resources, but again, for making a DPE as opposed to just like nothing, just like random monsters, like I think that's worth it. I think more than 2 extra draws, like 3+ is like a bit of a yikes. Like on turn 1, I mean, if it's turn 2 and you're trying to go for lethal, then yeah, I mean, do what you gotta do, but On turn 1 specifically, I don't think you should definitely let them be drawing like as many cards as they want. That's definitely not a good idea in my opinion. So yeah, they've got the Rite of Aramesir. I thought they were gonna have like a call by or a cross out. Like with how many cards they had in hand, I was so sure that my Maxx was gonna get stopped. But they do have the Griffin Rider, but they technically didn't stop my C, so I am gonna get draws here. So that's always nice. Alright, here I'll wait for the Dracoback to target the DPE before I go ahead and use the effect. I know the Wanderer Griffin Rider is going to negate it, but it's going to negate and destroy, so that as opposed to my Griffin Rider, or not my Griffin Rider, but the, as opposed to my DPE rather, going back to the deck, it's definitely the better alternative because, you know, well, then we are able to recur it and all that fun stuff. So, opponent seems to be going for a relatively unconventional combo line of their own here. Well, I say of their own because I just got done recording the Adventure 10 video that I did probably a couple of days ago at this point. I don't know, it's always weird when I'm trying to figure out like what order I want to put out the videos in. But here they ended up finishing on Cheng Ying and blowing up the what was it, the words I can't, the Ver Anaconda, there we go. Taking a decent chunk of damage, but nothing too bad at all. Alright, so I'll start by probing for Ash with the Foolish. I didn't get a prompt for my opponent to respond with it, so it doesn't seem like they have an Ash Blossom. That being the case, we can go ahead and use the Fateful Adventure and get the Rite of Aramesir back online. Or so I think, and then my opponent goes to use the Cheng Ying effect, but yeah, no, there's definitely not... yeah, there's definitely not going to be an issue though because we have the adventure token still, and we still have our normal summon, and then of course we have the Denier here as well. So the Denier, like I mentioned, is a very good as a level 3 tool in order to extend your plays. So with the Denier here, we're actually able to go into Cherubini, which will let us set up the the Ragged Gloves. From there, we can use that to send presumably Wings or Fogblade. Either, oh, we have Wings in hand, right? Of course. So the main important part was to banish it. That way we could summon the Torn Scales back from the grave with its effect. Pitch that Wings in order to get you know, more stuff into the graveyard. Alright, then from there I'm going to go into Leviair the Sea Dragon. Now I did kind of debate like at what point I wanted to necessarily move into access code here, or if I even wanted to do that. With our current setup, what I ended up doing was just yeah, overlaying these two and summoning the good old Break Sword. And not only did we boost the Cherubini's attack with the Ancient Cloak, but the Ragged Gloves also gives whatever it's used to exceed summon an extra 1,000 attack points. So we were able to very nicely and succinctly take care of our opponent here. And yeah, that was lethal there. So yeah, that kind of felt like one of those games where I just kind of like playing cards until I got 8,000 damage on board. Like I feel like there probably could have been, you know, a better way I could have played that out. But I guess those of you who are a bit more knowledgeable in that regard, definitely don't be shy of letting me know whether that's the case in the comments there. So all right, let's go ahead and take a look at the next game. All right, this next duel is going to be against Numeron, good old Numeron. Yeah, definitely when you're laddering, you know, it's definitely not uncommon to see quite a few Numerons around, but once you've played against enough of them, you know, it's definitely not too bad to play against them anymore. So I'm going to end up taking the first turn here. My hand's not super duper great, but we can at the very least get DPE and some other disruption on the board, and not even just on the board, but also of course we have the Maxx in our hand as well. But the Callby and the Crossout are definitely welcome additions to the gang here. Alright, so opponents get Terraforming for Numeron Network. It reveals their true colors fairly quickly here. They activate the Numeron Network. I'm going to respond with DPE's effect to pop both itself and the network. Now, I do realize that it's easy for them to just have another way to get another network or have the other one in hand already, but one of the main things I'm concerned about doing here is just getting monsters off of my board. That way my opponent isn't able to just, like, you know, run all their Numerons into them and then yeah, just smack me for lethal once the last one having 8,000 attacks. So Funnily enough, they do attempt to call by here, but I have the Crossout, but that does also mean that I'm not going to be able to use my call by here. Although that's probably not going to end up being relevant here. Alright, so yeah, definitely if this Numeron network is going to end up resolving, when a Maxx in response to it, we'll only get the one draw because, you know, Maxx says you draw a card each time your opponent special summons, not for each special summon, so, because, you know, summoning all those monsters is one special summon, then that's how that counts there. So they just smack me for 5k. But yeah, I'm not really worried about this Infinite track here because we just happen to be playing like the one deck that's like best equipped to prepare for it, right? Not only between, of course, the Dracoback and like the Imperms and all that stuff, but you know, also we check in with him. So we check in with him. It's nice. Oh man, I'm doing that thing where I just say words again. We're able to summon the Denier. I said check in with him. I would say summon the Denier. And then along with the Water Enchantress, we're able to then go into a Cherubni and then further go into our adventure plays. So, you know, we're able to set that up in a way where rather than just going straight into the adventure line, the Cherubni is able to come in first, actually using the Water Enchantress as a material. You know, I actually, while I was playing this game, my brain almost went on autopilot and just like banished the Enchantress from hand. And then I thought about it and I was like, wait, no, we totally have plays because of the Enchantress. It's one of the cool things about Adventure Phantom Knights is that, like, as long as it's got level 3, it's kind of like a combo piece. It's kind of like tuners in Halcyon decks, right? Like, as long as it's got a tuner, you know, the tuner text in its name, it's basically a combo piece for any given Halcyon combo. It's kind of the same thing with level 3 monsters in this deck. As long as it's level 3, it can definitely be used as a viable combo piece here. And so the funny thing is that what I get to do here is I even get to set up a Scythe Lock on my way to putting lethal on board. Like, I'm just going to end up putting down access code with this 3300 attack DPE. I don't expect my opponent is probably going to have anything here, but there is a Numeron wall to think about. Numeron wall, if they take damage once, they can discard it and then not take damage for the rest of their turn. So it definitely pays to have a backup plan in case these this kind of 1-2 punch doesn't go through. So that's definitely what that face down Scythe is for me, is the backup plan. But then they just concede, so obviously they don't have the Numeron wall in hand to counter me there. But if had they not conceded, then yeah, I would have led by attacking with the access code talker, punching them for 5,300 first. That way, if they did have the Numeron wall and then discarded to prevent further damage, they would have already taken, you know, as much damage as possible. And then again, I had the Scythe down from there. So then during the standby phase, I probably would, or during my opponent's draw phase, I would have just used, you know, the DPE effect to pop probably itself, or yeah, probably just its, I don't know about itself, maybe. Well, I would have thought about it more, obviously, but more importantly, pop the Scythe, and then from there, our opponent would be able to go into the extra deck, and then Numeron not being able to go into the extra deck means they can't really do anything whatsoever. So, alright, now let's go ahead and take a look at the next game. Alrighty, so this game here is going to be against, you know, good old Dnager, Lunalight, Kaiju. Dnager, Kaiju, Lunalight, whatever you want to call it. Yeah, I thought it was maybe going to be Numeron because they did let me go first here. I was a little bit suspicious of that, but Dnager, Kaiju, Lunalight is also very much a going second deck. And use the Rhoda for the Torn Scales to just probe and see if they have a C here. Or not a C, an Ash. But they don't, so then I'll go ahead and use the Water Enchantress effect. Of course, adding the Rite of Aramesir, and because we actually opened both Water Enchantresses, we can even use the second one as a combo piece. This hand's actually pretty ridiculous. It would have been nice to have like a call by or a crossout for, like, you know, to have as a counter for potential hand traps, but given that our opponent doesn't have anything to counter with, like, given that fact, I think we might have opened like one of the best opening hands you could have gotten with this deck. Again, you know, an ideal opening hand would have had something to counter, like a call by or crossout as well, but you know, given this particular scenario, we definitely cannot have asked for much more here. So I get to go into the Cherubni while I still have the Griffin Rider up, and I even have the Fusion Destiny in hand, so I don't even necessarily, like, not even necessarily, I don't have to go for Vert Anaconda. In a way, I actually can't Vert Anaconda because, you know, obviously I don't have another Fusion Destiny in my deck, so yeah, definitely have to be sort of mindful of that. Although that's actually not going to end up being too much of an issue here. Again, you use the Leviair to get back the Cloak, and then from there go into the Dagda. So we can set up the old Scythe here. Alright, yep, there's the Ancient Cloak effect. You can just target itself, so you don't even need another Dark Monster to be on the board. So I ended up actually sending those two off for Vert Anaconda anyway. You might be thinking, well, why did you do that, Lex? Because, you know, you don't need to because you don't have Fusion Dust in your deck. You just said that. Well, that might be the case, but I do still want to go for the Rusty Bardish here, and I need Dark Monsters in order to be able to do that. And Dagda is a light, so, you know, I wanted to make sure that I set up the Bardish here, so that way I can set up a Torn Scales in my grave and then a Fog Blade for the opponent's turn. From there, we'll end up rounding out with the Fusion Destiny. That'll let us drop the DPE on the board. And then now with this hand, we have set up, you know, the Scythe Lock. We have the Adventure Line set up. And then we even have another Fog Blade. And then the Rusty Bardish down on top of it. So definitely not feeling particularly concerned about anything my opponent could possibly do here. During the draw phase, I'll use the DPE effects to pop, you know, the Dracoback as well as the Artifact Scythe. This is for a few different reasons. It chain blocks the Artifact Scythe. Not that there was a whole lot that could have hit it there, but you know, better safe than sorry. Now they do actually have the Gamma here for the Scythe lock, or the locking rather effect of the Scythe. But I'll just go ahead and use the Griffin here. That's fine with me because I suspect my opponent will not have very many, if any, plays at all following the. Let's see, following that card getting stopped there. And sure enough, they just have the level 8 Astral Karibo before passing it over back to me. So definitely going to bring the DPE back during the standby. Well, as if that's a question, right? Like, of course I'm going to bring the DPE back. So I think what I'm going to start by doing here, as far as picking off the opponent's board, is I'm going to start by picking off the face-down back rows. I know they're probably just going to be bluffs, but I just want to make sure all the same. So I definitely wanted to give up the Foolish in order to be able to search the Wandering Griffin Rider. I probably could have made that work where I activate Foolish or something, and then a little bit later I'm able to search for it, but was no dice here, so. Okay, so yeah, here we're using the access code effect. Obviously, we're triggering a bunch of other effects as well. Or no, sorry, not the access code effect. We're rather about to go into an access code is what I meant to say. We're going to start by going to the Nightmare Unicorn, and we're going to use that effect, discarding the Fog Blade that we just searched. I'm going to put the face down monster and shuffle that back in the deck. Now I can use the Ancient Cloak F to add the Silent Boots here. And then that'll let me add some of the Torn Scales back from the grave, and I was going to use that in conjunction with the Nightmare Unicorn to then go into Access Code Talker, which would have been far more than enough for lethal there. So when the opponent conceded before they had to face down the access code there. So all right, let's go and take a look at the next game. All right, so this game here is going to be against an Adventure Pile. We love to see the pile decks, right? I mean, I do anyway. I guess, well, I feel like that's actually very divisive. I feel like we don't all love to see the pile decks, but I like them. I don't know. I think they're neat. I don't know about necessarily, like, again, you can have your opinion about, like, Halk Dawn, and to be fair, it's not a combo that I think necessarily should be legal at all, but, like I said, I think pile decks in general are cool. That's why I mostly like Adventure Pile, is that it just harkens back to the kind of older days of, like, not even just old school, like, GOAT format, but I've talked about this before, like, even 2010, like, Edison format was very much a format where you could, like, play 40 good cards that at least somewhat synergized, and it would do you pretty well. You could get pretty far with it, and that's kind of how an Adventure Pile feels as well. So, while under Maxx C, excuse me, I had to stretch there for a moment. So while under Maxx C, they decide not to make too many plays here, particularly with the Adventure line. They will be able to still set up the Griffin Rider, but I'm not super worried about one Omni Negate with this hand. Our hand's looking pretty good. We even have like kind of like a Scythe Lock setup here, even that we just opened without having to go into like Dagda and Vert, right? So here I set the Fusion Destiny and then activated the Tsuchinoko effect, and the reason I did it this way is because I knew I definitely did not want to discard my Fusion Destiny, And I debated if I want to set Scythe as well. Well, actually, at first I didn't really debate. At first I was like, oh, I'll just set Scythe too. But then I really thought about it, and if I had set Scythe, then my options of what got discarded would be like Tsuchinoko itself, which is fine, Ragged Gloves, which is fine, Torn Scales would be a bit hard but workable, and Denier I definitely want on board for obviously this Fusion Destiny. So I thought about the pros and cons of setting Scythe or keeping it in hand, and I ultimately decided that it would be better to activate the Tsuchinoko effect while the Scythe is in hand, but the Fusion Destiny is face down, and then that way we can, you know, just see from there, I guess, how things play out. So we ended up discarding the Ragged Gloves, which is definitely an ideal outcome for me, especially drawing this. Well, I say especially drawing this Ancient Cloak, but from what I remember, actually, on this game, I don't think we actually end up needing that Ancient Cloak at all. Yes, of course, and then we have the Cherubini setting up the Adventure line. That'll let us get the Fateful Adventure. And then from there, of course, good old Griffin Rider. But the opponent's going to negate the Fateful Adventure, which of course I am definitely more than okay with here. Alright, from there I can use the Ragged Gloves effect to then set up the Phantom Knight's Wing in my grave, and then that'll let me bring back the Torn Scales, and then Torn Scales I can send the Cloak, and then set up even more stuff like the Fog Blade engrave. I don't think I've actually summoned the Silent Boots with its own effect, so yeah, I can Ancient Cloak and then special the Boots. There's just a ton of different options here. Ton of different options. We love to see it. I'm going to go for the Leviair here and start wheeling my stuff back, particularly this Ancient Cloak. I definitely don't need to set up a dog die or anything, but yeah, we'll love to still have all of our options available to us, especially for the access code here. So we'll use that and pitch the Artifact Scythe in order to put back the... shoot, what monster did I just now put back? Of course, I can't remember already. It was the Adventure token, of course. Right. So, alright, then I can use the Wings to get back the Cloak, and then my opponent realizes that's, you know, over 8,000. I was actually at that point debating if I wanted to use Cloak's effect on access code for lethal, or just attack with the Cloak, and I was about to just enter battle phase when my opponent conceded. So, yep, GG's there for sure. Alright, I think I have time for one more game. Let's go ahead and go straight into it. Okay, last game of the video here is another game against Adventure Denier. In this one, I get to show off a pretty neat sequence of plays that will kind of show you how, one of the ways in which, I guess, that you can play through a Nibiru, actually. So, opponent's going to take the first turn here. Normal summoning the good old... Oh, no, I'm sorry. I think I was thinking of a different game, question mark? Yeah, I might have been thinking of a different game. This might be an entirely different game altogether, but I guess we'll have to wait and see. No, actually I don't think it is. Shoot, I shouldn't speak ahead like that. That's kind of a bad habit I have sometimes, but in any case, the opponent is going to go first here. They're going to normal summon a Sangan, which, for those of you who are not familiar with Adventure Pile decks, which I thought this was Adventure Denier, I think it just has some more Adventure Denier type stuff in it, but it's also very much a pile. Adventure Pile decks are just like a pile of 40 good cards that often go into the Halcyon combo here in order to make their plays. So, yeah, now that you can use the O-Lion with the tokens, summon, you know, the Denlong. So yeah, definitely not too out of the ordinary from what we tend to do as well. Yeah, looking at my hand here, I'm just thinking, like, okay, if I actually managed to get Droplet, that would be pretty nice here. But we'll just have to see. So interesting that they summoned back the Jet Synchron. Oh, it's for the Cupid pitch. Right, of course. Yeah, no, this is for some reason I still had in my head I was playing as Adventure Denier. I was like, that's a weird order to do things in for your combo, and it's like, oh, wait, no, Lex, that's not their combo. They were doing a different combo. Alright, so yeah, it looks like they're going to have the Boar Load and the 9 Pillars down for sure, as well as the Thunder Dragon Colossus, so we'll just have to wait and see what all we end up with here. Again, I'm mainly in like a Forbidden Droplet waiting room right here, right? Like I'm just waiting to see if I top deck this card, and and then see if I need to concede or not. But lo and behold, we actually do top deck the Forbidden Droplet, but our opponent unfortunately has a Maxx here. Oh, we did get the call by though, so there is that. And it's weird. The opponent uses the bore load effect on the call by, which I guess isn't that weird to be fair, but like it's interesting that was like, I don't know. I guess I don't know again how like. Nah, whatever. I don't even know what I'm trying to say. What else is new? In any case, here we are going to lose the chain link battle here, so you know, no dice, no cigar. We are going to have to be under the Maxx here. Alright, so I'm going to lead with the adventure token for the Fateful, you know, summon the Wandering Gloves, and then from there, search good old Griffin Rider. Okay, now from here I can use the Cloak effect to add a Silent Boots and then special that. So like, I know I'm at least getting somewhere, like at this point. Oh, I did also misplay. I think I summoned this token in defense mode this turn. I definitely should have waited and summoned that in attack mode there. But yeah, they did unfortunately have the ghost over here, so that's gonna be no dice on the negate from the what do you call it, from the words, jeez, I'm so sorry. Okay, now here is actually the main thing that I've been thinking of the whole time. This is why I've been distracted, because I was wondering if this line was going to come up here. So we do actually get to show off playing through Nibiru here a bit, right? So we can use the Silent Boots to add the wings, and that'll let us summon back the Torn Scales because we sent the boots there. So now that I've sent wing and set up my graveyard, I can now very easily then go into our Leviair the Sea Dragon here, and then continue, just generally continue our plays here. I'm pretty much just going to be setting up a Scythe Lock here in order to kind of like circumvent all the draws and give my opponent off of the Maxx. So hopefully that ends up being enough, but I guess we'll have to wait and see here. Okay, yeah, now then I can send those two off for the Predaplant Vert Anaconda. Alright, so then now here comes that good old DPE. Alright, so yeah, again, we did give our opponent a lot of draws, but as long as this Scythe Lock pans out, that might not even be the end of the world, right? But then, of course, they have the Cyframe Gear Gamma, so, alas, no fun allowed for us. We are going to yeah. So yeah, the Scythe by itself obviously is not going to be doing a whole lot here, and the fact that our opponent's got the Gamma plus the Cyframe Driver, just not only as a counter, but also now as like threats on the board, definitely extra threatening. The call by for the DPE for me just kind of like sealed the case that, yeah, I probably wasn't going to win this game, but yeah, you know, well, it is what it is, so. Okay, I thought I conceded by this point. Okay, there we go. I was literally just about to say I thought I had conceded at this point. Yeah, because yeah, it was pretty obvious my opponent knew how to put lethal on board. They'd already set up all the steps to do so. So, yeah, but I did still want to show that game just to show like how you can play through Nibiru potentially. That was like the main focus of this game for me, was that we were able to utilize our graveyard effects and obviously the token itself to an extent, but mostly just like the graveyard-based effects. As long as we are, you know, being mindful of what goes to grave and what all we've used, and make sure we're not trying to reuse an effect we've already used, then there can definitely be a lot of stuff that kind of gets overlooked, even within this own build, let alone the like deck as a whole. So, all right, let's go ahead and move now to the outro. All right, everybody, thank you so much for watching, especially all the way to the very end. That does mean a whole lot to me personally, and also is a great way to support the channel. Also means a lot when you guys comment and subscribe. The comments especially. Definitely let me know what you think of this deck, especially now that we're at the time this video is coming out, like post new pack post branded format. Where do you guys think this deck lies, and how do you think the build could be adjusted to maybe interact in that kind of a format a little better? I would definitely love to hear from you about that, as well as just, gameplay and deck building suggestions in general. That's always the case. I'm always advocating for good old community-based learning. So, oops, sorry, leaning on my chair a bit there, squeaking. But yeah, I'd definitely love to hear from you guys. And yeah, I think that's just going to about do it for this one. So without further ado, this is XLex. I'm signing out. Hope you guys have a fantastic day.